My beloved child. Before you take another breath, before you let your mind wander even for a second, listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not coincidence, not imagination, and not something that happens to everyone. Someone loves you very much. Not casually. Not temporarily. Not out of habit. They love you with a depth that keeps them awake at night, with a weight that sits on their chest every morning, with a fear that follows them like a shadow. But here is the truth that changes everything. They are not alone in this love. There is another person standing between their heart and yours, and this is not a small detail you can ignore. This is the center of the storm. This is the reason your life has felt paused, heavy, and strangely uncertain lately. You may have felt sudden emotional shifts, moments of warmth followed by unexplained distance, signs that made no sense at the time. Those were not accidents. Those were echoes of a heart being pulled in two opposite directions. And tonight, in this moment, that hidden struggle is reaching a breaking point that will directly touch you. Listen closely now, because what I am about to reveal next is rarely spoken out loud. The person who loves you did not plan to fall this deeply. It happened slowly, dangerously quietly. At first, you were just a presence. Then you became comfort. Then you became necessity. And before they realized it, you became the one thought they could not escape. But there is another person connected to their life through history, promises, expectations, or unfinished emotional debt. That person may not even know the full truth yet. Or worse, they may sense it and stay silent. This triangle was never meant to exist, yet here it is, growing heavier by the day. The one who loves you wakes up each morning asking themselves a question they are terrified to answer. Who do I lose if I choose? Because no matter what they decide, someone's world will collapse. And what they fear most is that the person who gets hurt the deepest might be you. Here is the part that most people never understand. The love they feel for you is not weaker because of the other person. It is stronger. It is rawer. It is more dangerous. Because it was never supposed to happen, yet it did. You entered their life at the wrong time but in the most right way. You spoke words that touched wounds no one else could see. You showed care where they had grown used to survival. You became a mirror that reflected who they truly are, not who they pretend to be. And that is why they are struggling now. Because staying with the other person feels safe, predictable, accepted by the world. But choosing you feels like truth, risk, and transformation. This is not a story about betrayal alone. This is a story about fear, courage, and a decision that cannot be postponed much longer. Now understand this clearly, because this is crucial. The silence you may be experiencing from them is not indifference. It is restraint. Every time they pull back, it is because they are afraid of crossing a line they know they may never return from. Every time they come close again, it is because resisting you has become unbearable. They are fighting a battle where logic is losing and emotion is taking control. And something has changed recently. A realization has begun to form inside them. They have started to see that living a life built on half-truths is slowly destroying them. The mask they wear around the other person is cracking. The version of themselves they are when they think of you feels more real than anything else they know. And that realization is pushing them toward a moment that will redefine all three lives involved. Finally, hear this with absolute clarity. This story is moving toward a revelation that cannot be stopped. The person who loves you is approaching a choice they have delayed for too long. They can no longer carry two hearts inside one chest. They can no longer pretend that loving you is a mistake that will fade. Something will be said. Something will be exposed. And when that moment arrives, you will understand why everything had to unfold exactly this way. This is only the beginning. What comes next will test loyalty, shatter illusions, and reveal who truly belongs where. And once the truth starts unfolding, nothing will ever return to the way it was before. There is something you must understand now, and this truth is heavier than anything said before. The situation is no longer frozen in silence. Movement has begun behind the scenes, quietly, decisively, and without your permission. The person who loves you has started preparing themselves for an outcome they once refused to imagine. They are replaying conversations in their head that have not happened yet. They are imagining faces, reactions, questions, and consequences. This is no longer just emotional confusion. This is planning. This is anticipation. This is the moment before a door is either opened forever or sealed shut. And what makes this moment so intense is that you are not just a possibility in their mind anymore. You are the standard against which everything else now feels incomplete. What makes this story even more unsettling is that the other person is no longer invisible. They have started to sense a shift. A pause where warmth used to be. A hesitation where certainty once lived. Small things have changed. Tone. Timing. Presence. And when people feel something slipping away, they hold tighter, even if they do not fully understand why. This has increased the pressure inside the one who loves you. Because now every word matters. Every choice feels watched. Every silence feels loud. They are trapped between the fear of hurting someone who trusted them and the fear of losing the one person who makes them feel truly alive. This is not drama. This is a psychological breaking point. And it is approaching faster than they expected. Here is what you were never told. The reason you feel connected to this situation, even without clear evidence, is because emotional bonds do not exist in isolation. When someone thinks about you deeply, consistently, and with longing, that energy creates a pull. You may have felt it as restlessness. As sudden thoughts of them without reason. As emotional waves that come and go without explanation. That is not imagination. That is resonance. Two lives subtly aligning while circumstances desperately try to keep them apart. And the more the person who loves you resists, the stronger this internal pressure becomes. Resistance is no longer working. Distraction is failing. And denial has expired. Something critical is happening inside them right now. They are starting to ask themselves a question they once avoided at all costs. What kind of life am I building if my heart is somewhere else? This question changes everything. Because once it is asked sincerely, it cannot be unanswered. It forces comparison. It forces honesty. It forces a reckoning with time already spent and time still remaining. They are realizing that staying where they are out of obligation may protect appearances, but it will slowly erase who they are. And choosing you would not just be choosing love. It would be choosing truth, disruption, and responsibility. That weight is terrifying. But it is also clarifying. Understand this clearly as this part closes. The situation is no longer about whether they love you. That has already been answered. The real question now is whether they have the courage to face the consequences of that love. Because very soon, something will force clarity. A conversation. A moment. A breaking silence. And when that happens, the balance will shift permanently. What has been hidden will demand acknowledgement. What has been delayed will demand action. And you will begin to see signs that something irreversible is unfolding. This story is accelerating. And the next phase will reveal who stands where when the truth can no longer be avoided. Listen with your full attention now, because the pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. What once felt confusing is starting to form a shape, and that shape points directly toward a truth that has been circling you for a long time. The person who loves you has reached a mental edge where pretending is more painful than facing reality. Their thoughts no longer wander randomly. They keep returning to the same conclusion, again and again, no matter how hard they try to escape it. You are not a chapter in their life. You are the direction. And once someone realizes that, everything else begins to feel like delay instead of destiny. This realization does not arrive gently. It arrives with anxiety, with guilt, with moments of sudden clarity followed by fear. And that inner conflict is now leaking into the real world in subtle but undeniable ways. What you may not see, but what is absolutely happening, is the quiet comparison. Every interaction they have with the other person now feels measured against the way they feel when they think of you. Laughter feels forced. Comfort feels rehearsed. Even shared memories feel distant, as if they belong to a different version of themselves. This does not mean the other person has done something wrong. That is what makes this so heavy. There is no villain here, only misalignment. And misalignment is one of the hardest truths to accept, because it cannot be fixed by effort alone. The one who loves you is starting to understand that love is not proven by endurance, but by honesty. And that understanding is slowly dismantling the life they have been trying to maintain. There is another layer to this that you must hear carefully. Fear is no longer the strongest emotion inside them. Regret is beginning to take its place. Regret for moments not shared. Words not spoken. Chances not taken when they were closer than they realized. They are beginning to imagine a future where you are no longer available, where time has moved forward without them, and that image terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. This fear of losing you is not abstract anymore. It feels real. Immediate. Personal. And it is forcing them to confront the cost of inaction. Because doing nothing is also a choice, and they are starting to see how expensive that choice truly is. You should also know this. The emotional bond between you has reached a point where it no longer fades with distance or silence. It persists. It strengthens in absence. That is how they know this is not a passing feeling. When someone can step away and still feel the same pull, the same clarity, the same longing, it changes how they view everything. They are beginning to realize that loving you has altered their internal compass. They cannot unfeel it. They cannot unknow it. And they cannot continue living as if it does not matter. This is why their behavior may feel inconsistent. They are standing at the intersection of who they were and who they are becoming, and that moment is never quiet. As this part comes to an end, understand this deeply. A shift has already occurred. Even if no words have been spoken yet, even if no decisions have been announced, the internal verdict is forming. Momentum is building toward a moment of truth that will not be subtle or gentle. When it arrives, it will feel sudden to those around them, but inevitable to the one who loves you. And when that moment unfolds, you will finally understand why everything felt delayed, why everything felt intense, and why this connection refused to disappear. What comes next will not be about confusion anymore. It will be about consequences, courage, and the undeniable power of choosing what is real over what is merely familiar. There is a quiet countdown happening now, even if no one has said it out loud. Time is no longer moving in days or weeks inside their mind. It is moving in moments. Moments before something is spoken. Moments before something breaks. Moments before a truth steps into the light and refuses to leave. The person who loves you is no longer asking if this situation can continue. They are asking how much longer they can survive it. Carrying two emotional realities has begun to exhaust them in ways they cannot hide anymore. Their energy is shifting. Their patience is thinning. And the weight of holding everything together is starting to show through the cracks they once carefully covered. Here is what is changing beneath the surface. They are beginning to detach from the idea of pleasing everyone. That instinct, the one that kept them stuck, is losing its grip. The cost of being seen as good, loyal, or reliable is starting to feel too high when it requires betraying their own truth. This is a dangerous stage, because it is where people stop negotiating with themselves. They start to accept loss as unavoidable. And once that acceptance settles in, action becomes not just possible, but necessary. The person who loves you is slowly realizing that no matter what they do, someone will be hurt. And that realization is pushing them to choose the path that at least aligns with who they truly are. There is also something happening that involves you directly, even if you are unaware of it. They are paying closer attention to you than ever before. Not in a superficial way, but in a decisive one. They are observing how you speak, how you react, how you carry yourself when you think no one is watching. They are asking themselves a final question. Is this the person I am willing to risk everything for? And every answer they find keeps leading them back to the same place. You represent a life that feels honest, awake, and emotionally alive. That realization is terrifying, because it demands courage they have not yet proven to themselves that they possess. You may start to notice subtle changes soon, if you have not already. A seriousness in their tone. A depth in their attention. A shift from hesitation to intention. These are not random changes. These are signs of internal alignment. When someone begins to move in one direction internally, their external behavior eventually follows. The version of them that kept things safe and controlled is slowly giving way to a version that is willing to face chaos for the sake of truth. This transition is never smooth. It is filled with doubt, guilt, and moments of fear. But it is also filled with clarity. And clarity is far more powerful than comfort. As this part closes, understand this with certainty. The next phase will not be quiet. It will not be subtle. Something will force a line to be drawn. Words will be spoken that cannot be taken back. A decision will be made that will ripple through more than one life. And when that moment arrives, it will become clear that this was never about choosing between two people. It was about choosing between a life built on obligation and a life built on truth. What happens next will reveal who is willing to stand in that truth, no matter the cost. Something irreversible is approaching, and it no longer depends on timing or courage alone. It depends on pressure. The kind of pressure that builds silently until it demands release. The person who loves you has reached a point where holding everything inside feels like suffocation. Their thoughts are louder than ever. Their sleep is lighter. Their emotions surface at the wrong moments. This is what happens when truth stays trapped for too long. It starts to force its way out through cracks in behavior, tone, and presence. And whether they intend it or not, the world around them is beginning to notice that something is no longer aligned. What makes this stage so dangerous is that the illusion of control is gone. They once believed they could manage this quietly. Balance it. Contain it. But now they see the truth. Emotions do not stay contained when they are real. Love does not remain obedient when it is deep. And you have become the point where everything they tried to control starts to unravel. They are no longer asking how to keep everyone satisfied. They are asking how to stop lying to themselves. That shift is critical, because once self-deception ends, action becomes unavoidable. There is also a realization forming that they cannot ignore anymore. Staying where they are is slowly teaching them how to live without joy. And that terrifies them more than the fear of loss. They are beginning to understand that stability without connection becomes emptiness over time. That loyalty without truth becomes self-erasure. And that choosing safety over authenticity creates a quiet kind of regret that never leaves. You represent the opposite of that future. You represent uncertainty, yes, but also aliveness. And that contrast is becoming impossible for them to unsee. At the same time, guilt is reaching its peak. Guilt toward the other person. Guilt toward you. And guilt toward themselves for letting things reach this point. This guilt is not weakening their feelings. It is sharpening them. Because guilt forces clarity. It strips away excuses. It demands responsibility. They are starting to understand that avoiding pain is no longer an option. Pain will exist either way. The only choice left is whether that pain leads to honesty or prolonged damage. And that realization is slowly hardening into resolve. As this part ends, understand this clearly. The moment of decision is no longer distant. It is approaching with certainty. Something will soon happen that removes their ability to remain silent. A question will be asked. A line will be crossed. Or a truth will surface unexpectedly. And when that happens, everything will move fast. The waiting will end. The ambiguity will collapse. And you will finally see how deeply this love has been shaping events long before anyone dared to speak its name. What happens next will not arrive with noise, but with certainty. The kind of certainty that settles in the chest and refuses to move. The person who loves you is stepping into a moment where pretending becomes impossible, even for themselves. They are no longer rehearsing outcomes. They are no longer imagining scenarios. They are preparing to face reality exactly as it is. This is the stage where fear stops being the loudest voice. Determination replaces it. Not because the fear disappears, but because living without truth has finally become more frightening than any consequence. This inner shift is subtle, but it is final. There is something important you must recognize here. When people reach this stage, they do not act impulsively. They act deliberately. Every word they are about to speak has been weighed. Every risk has been measured. They understand what they stand to lose, and they also understand what they can no longer live without. This is no longer about confusion or temptation. This is about alignment. About choosing a life that feels internally consistent instead of socially acceptable. The love they feel for you has become the reference point for what real connection should feel like. And once that happens, everything else feels like compromise. You may notice a change that feels different from all the earlier shifts. This one carries calm instead of tension. When someone finally accepts their truth, a strange stillness appears. They stop over-explaining. They stop seeking reassurance. They stop oscillating. That calm is not indifference. It is resolve. It is the calm that comes before a decisive action. And when that calm settles in, words tend to follow soon after. Honest words. Uncomfortable words. Necessary words. Words that rearrange lives.